This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Hey, this is William Pickup and Ryan Larry. You're listening to and watching the Inside the C-Suite podcast. We have Steve Cox on today from Employ, and we'll be talking to him about his career, kind of where he's at now, but also how he got there, the whole process. So, Steve, thanks for being on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. Appreciate you having me on the show. I've been looking forward to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, tell us a little bit about your current gig. What are you doing here with Employ?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've been with Employ now for about 60 days. I'm the chief exec of Employ. And so, we're really focused on the applicant tracking system space. That's where we focus. We're a people first, organization. And, we think about, that from a customer perspective as well. And really our goal is to kind of, be the leading provider in that ATS space.
And you've got 3 ATSs, I believe, if I remember correctly. So you got JobVite, you've got Lever, and Jazz HR.
Yeah, we do, and we think about them slightly different. I saw you with the hand motion, JobVite, Lever, Jazz, like a.
That's how I think of them.
Like a small, medium, and large. We think about it slightly differently now. Like we think about it more like simple, complicated, more complicated. Because
Yeah. No,
when you look at our customers, we have, some really big customers, that have simple recruiting requirements that, are suitable for Jazz. And then, we have customers that, have got really sort of complicated requirements, maybe like niche markets, but like, they've got, they're a small organization, but they've got sort of complicated needs. And then really kind of around that, we layer, recruitment, marketing, CRM, as real sort of additives, for our portfolio.
So the size of company, because I had an SMB, mid-cap or whatever, and then enterprise. But what you're saying, if I understand it correctly, is that really, William, it's about the hiring complexity. And you could have a big company, let's say a 10,000 person firm that you wouldn't necessarily put in the, you'd take them, put them in enterprise, but their complexity is actually not as much. Is that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And same as where we see in like, small organizations where they've got more complex requirements, right? If you think about somebody like, I don't know, like a medical center where they're looking to go hire physicians and, they want to do more kind of, recruitment, marketing, build talent pool, be able to go out and, warm those people up and then, bring those people in, that's where they would need something a little bit more complicated than Jazz. Whereas, if you think about someone in a call center, hiring call center operators, and it's just, the same hire over and over and over again, it doesn't really matter the size. It's a simple need.
I consulted with an energy company down in Houston one time, and they had 100 employees, but they're in 80 different countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the complexity was like intense. But it was a 100-person firm. It's like you would look at them and go, it's a small business. It's like, it is technically. However, the HR complexity and the recruiting complexity off the charts.
And it's one of the things I've seen like coming into this space when you look around. A lot of people talk about all-in-one solution, right? We're an all-in-one solution and, we can fit wherever we need to fit in the market. And I think that does kind of like, the consumers of ATS software is a little bit of a disservice because, there's no such thing as all-in-one, right? Everybody has different needs, different requirements. And I think that's one of the real benefits of Employ is that, we can take the time to understand the business needs, what are the differentiators, and then we can give you right product, right fit. And so that's kind of, is a win for us.
Yeah. So Steve, maybe let's start there. You've come into this space. So you don't have a background in work tech, in HR tech. You've software, of course, right? Maybe give us a little overview of how did you get into this space?
And what do you think of our little
Why?
industry?
Yeah, like you've been
Yeah.
here for okay, so you've been here for 60 days. We
You
know
already know everything.
you
Yeah,
don't drink
yeah, yeah.
Dr. Pepper, right?
Yeah.
You don't have a football team, but
Yep.
you speak about the ATS world very well,
Yeah,
right?
you do.
Yeah.
But tell how did you get into it?
Well, let me give you a little fun fact before I get into it. So my wife's a recruiter.
Oh,
And so she's been a
Oh my God.
recruiter. She's
all
been a
right. So
recruiter. Yeah.
so I've got to ask: is she really running the show behind the scenes? And are you bringing her ideas to your meetings and not giving her credit?
You got
100%.
That's a
me.
fair. That's a fair question.
Oh, you've got
100%.
me. Do you know? I've used that line maybe 100 times in 60 days, and not one
100%.
person's called me out on it. So
She's
I
actually
appreciate.
off to the side of the camera. Steve, don't say that. No.
Yeah,
She
that's
she
it.
is. If he turns the
Yeah,
camera around, she's right there.
she's my chief product officer, my chief revenue officer, my chief customer officer, my EA, and my chief of staff all rolled into one.
But to Ryan's point, we assumed you didn't know the industry when in fact you actually been living in our industry.
It's been dinner table conversation
Yeah.
for the last
Yeah,
years.
it's interesting because I actually said to someone the other day, like, and I'll get into how I ended up here in a minute, but like I said to someone the other day, it's like I didn't realize that if someone said to me, "What do you know about the HR tech space?" I'd be like, "Don't know, very little. Like I've never worked in the HR tech space." I turn up here, I start having conversations, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like what we were talking about over dinner last night. Like oh, I recognize this problem. Oh, the hiring manager did what? Like, I'm like, I get this. Like, I understand more about this than I thought.
See, this is more interesting than your journey because now I want to know at what moment did you think in these conversations, my wife isn't full of shit?
Hey, this is William Tincup, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Practitioner Corner podcast. It's a wonderful podcast about the journey, the paths of how practitioners, both HR and TA, kind of go from high school, college, all the way to where they are right now. Some of the things that they've learned, how they've been successful, people that thrive around them, etc. It's a fun podcast. You'll love it. You'll learn from it. Subscribe to it. Thanks.
She's actually telling the truth. And here you thought she was just complaining about her job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's like, actually, that's legit. She all along, she's been telling the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned some of the things because you hear them as problems, right? And so, like, I hear them as problems, but I don't need to solve the problems because, I just need to listen and be empathetic, right? Well, now I'm hearing those problems amplified, and now I'm in a position of responsibility. I need to go solve those problems as well. And so the learning definitely got me up to speed a lot quicker than I would have thought.
Right. He still never answered how he got into the space, though.
Oh, we know that he's about to.
I'm about to. I'm getting there. So how I got into this space was, I've got a career in software and technology. I know we're going to talk about that in a little while. My last company, when I left that company, I decided to take a break. And I kind of promised myself that I was going to get into a company that did something that I could be passionate about. I don't think I've always made those decisions, especially early in my career, I guess lack of maturity, lack of understanding. But I kind of reached a position where I was like, this next job I take, it needs to be something I care about. And to be honest, like, I'm passionate about technology, right? And I'm passionate about people. I never thought about combining those two things. So when I kind of started this search, it was like technology, I quite like security, I quite like, sort of infrastructure type stuff. Maybe I'll get in a software company that fits around that space. And so, as you do, right, I start taking the calls from the, executive search firms and, the next one calls and it's like, government. And then there's like legal and then there's like background checks and there's all these different opportunities present themselves. And then this opportunity came up and it was like HR tech. And I was like, okay, I'll have a conversation. And as I started to talk about it, the kind of thing I guess that really resonated for me is I'm a kind of people first leader. And I believe that it takes great people to build great companies. And so whichever organization I went into, I would have the opportunity to be able to affect that by the people that are hired in the company that I'm building. But what this gives me an opportunity is to not only do that, but to help our customers do that as well. And that's what really kind of excited me and got me into this opportunity to employ.
I love it. All right. Ryan normally does this, but let's go backwards to whatever age you want to pick. What did you want to be when you grew up? What was the bit?
I mean, I've never really had an idea. I had a very interesting journey into technology.
I have a chance in life still. I never had that. Steve, everyone always comes on the show with intent. They're like, I want it to be this.
Yeah.
No one ever says, I really had no clue.
Yeah, I didn't have a clue. I mean, like, if I go back early on, I mean, at school, I kind of was the kind of person I worked hard at it, but, never really kind of saw a purpose to it and never really understood. And I never went to college. So, in the UK, back when I left school, you could leave at 16. So I left at 16. I then kind of did, various jobs for a while, trying to figure out. And I mean, when I say various jobs, I mean, I was a roofer for a little while. I did some, bits and pieces to try and figure out what I wanted to do. But then when I was like 17, my dad owned a taxi firm. So I decided to become a taxi driver. And so, interesting, I was my 17th birthday when you can pass your driving test in the UK. I was my birthday was June the 14th, and then July the 2nd, I passed my driving test at 9 o'clock in the morning, and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was a fully fledged taxi driver.
Wow. Hey, that's a legit job, especially in London. That's a trade craft job.
It is. And do you know the one thing I look back in my career and I think, because I was a taxi driver from when I was 17 till I was 21. That's what I did, drove a taxi. And people think, taxi driver, how does that lead you to kind of technology? How does that get you into business? But the one thing for me about being a taxi driver that you figure out really quickly is you've got about anywhere between 2 and 20 minutes to build a relationship with someone to get them to give you a tip, right? And you learn to read people, right? It's you get the people in the car who want to chat. You get the people in the car who don't want to chat, right? And you kind of learn to kind of read people, read their body language, listen to them, understand what they want. If they want some advice, give them some advice. If they want to know where to go eat, go. Don't force your opinions on them. And so you get really good at relationship building and networking. And, I think that's something that's really kind of stood me in good ground throughout my entire career.
I was about to say that could definitely help you in sales. I mean, it probably helps you in all relationships, but I mean, I can see that automatically helping you in sales.
Yeah, and you have to deal with all types of people as well. You don't get to choose, right? So it's you get some real difficult people, and you get some real fun people, and you get some drunk people, and you just run the whole gambit of human population, and you just go figure out how to deal with them.
Yeah, there's two things I remember about being in cabs in London, and they're not. Well, one was good. One was funny because they were drunk. The second was I was riding backwards, faced the opposite way. I got so sick in the taxi from driving that way. I never got into another taxi in London for a couple times I've been there.
Yeah, see, that's a rookie mistake, right? You never sit in the back-facing seat. If you see a taxi, get in first. Take the forward-facing seat.
It really did.
That is a rookie mistake.
It changed my entire next couple.
Yeah.
I was wrecked. I couldn't catch myself. I was being seasick on land.
But do you know what? But it was a customer one day. This is where my opportunity came in. Asked me the very same question that you asked me, right? Which is one day I picked up a customer, and I remember I was taking him to Ford Motor Company's head office in Worley, Essex, in the UK. Wow. And we were driving along and we were chatting, and I was asking him what he did. And he basically worked in the computer industry. And, this is the mid 90s, right? So 1996. So the internet still really wasn't around, and, people didn't really know much about computers. They didn't really teach about it in school. And so he kind of said to me, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I was like, what a great question. I was like, I'm going to drive a taxi. I don't know. What do you mean? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? And he said, have you ever thought about getting into computers? And I'm like, no. I've never thought about getting into computers. That's what. And he said, well, look, he said, I'm looking for somebody that knows how to use a screwdriver, that can drive a car, that can read a map, to come work with us, like in a junior position, and train him up. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, like, why not? Like, sounds like a good opportunity. And so, I ended up going for an interview with him. It turns out he didn't have a job for me. And so, the budget got pulled, which, as a taxi driver, I didn't really understand the whole corporate budgeting system and process. But I was like, I just assumed that he didn't think I was the right person. And then 6 months later, he phoned me up and said, hey, we have budget. Do you want the job? And so I took the job.
Perfect timing.
The rest is history.
Perfect timing to get into computers too. By the way, just perfect timing. Again, kind of one of those things you couldn't plan.
Yeah.
But it just happened, and 6 months later, you were on his mind.
Yeah, and it was great for me, and it was fascinating because when I joined, it was at a time where Ford had a full communication network, and so if you imagine every factory in Europe and the UK had TV screens. And then every week they would update the pages. It was teletext, right. The old rolling text on the screen, And then they would play a video once a day, and it was kind of broadcast by satellite, and it was run around the factories and had the TVs. And so when I turned up, the guy said to me, he said, "Look," he said, "here's what I want you to go do." He said, "I want you to drive around every factory in the UK and here's a map of every factory in the UK, find all the TVs, put a tick if they work and a cross if they don't." And I was like, okay, I can go do that. And so I did it. I came back and he said, now let me show you how to fix them. So it's very simple, quick, easy fix. He said, now I want you to go around and drive and fix them. And I was like, so I did it. I come back and it's great. He said, now I want you to go to Europe and go to every factory in Europe. So he gives me the map of every factory in Europe. Me being smart, I said, I've got an idea for you. Why don't I take the parts with me and fix them as I go? Right? Because that would make sense. And his response was, but then we'll finish too early. Right. And, we need to make the contract last. Right? Which was probably my second introduction into how kind of some people operate in the corporate world. Right. And so I did that. And then they started to teach me about really getting into the computer side of it. So I started by building, old 386 computers, 486 computers, and so on, and kind of, started to learn and work my way up from there. And the whole gambit of the internet coming about, and understanding all of that. And it was just a really interesting time. And I think you said it, as technology was moving so slowly, it was much easier to sort of learn and keep up with it as it goes.
And so, what did you do next? What was after that?
Well, it was interesting because, I worked there for about 2 years. I learned a lot. And then, contract come to an end and he kind of made me redundant. And so by now I had a taste for it. And, I felt like I had value to add. So this is kind of ties into my second recruitment story, I guess, is that at the time, obviously the internet wasn't really around, right? So if you wanted to find a job, you had to go find an agency. And so I printed a copy of my resume. And I went up to London and I literally walked around the agencies going in to hand out my resume to go find a job. And I got put forward for a couple of opportunities. And then I ended up in an accountancy firm in the UK and basically just doing help desk. They were a big IBM house at the time and they were looking for someone to come in, learn about, IBM and IBM operating systems and, IBM computers. And, they brought me in and trained me up. And I spent a period of time there. And then that was where I kind of started to really, I guess, become what I would class as a techie. Because, we were making the move from IBM to Microsoft. And so they paid for us to do training. I did my kind of Microsoft, exams and started to really kind of get into it and feel like I had a real passion for it. And, a real craft, a skill for it.
Was that the MCSE?
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the Dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Tuesday on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozma St. John host the highly anticipated new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars. I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon. Series premiere Tuesday on NBC.
Certainly was. I did my MCSE in Windows NT 3.5, Windows NT 4, and 2000 and 2003. Oh yeah, I did.
I hope this is on your LinkedIn profile.
I did it, and so I also did IBM OS2, and we did IBM OS2 to NT migrations. Yep. And at the time, I mean, we used networking technology, Token Ring, which was the old 16 megabit networking, and we did a conversion to Ethernet. And that's where that was become a real passion of mine, was like the feeling of being able to type some words on the screen, type someone's email address, push a button, and then seconds later it pops up on someone else's screen. It was like, how does that happen? Like, how does that happen?
I don't know how that. It's interesting you say that, because I always think about radio. Like, I understand how, but the words I'm saying now are going through here to I get it.
It's all ones. It's all ones and zeros.
It's all ones and zeros. Yeah.
It's fascinating, and it was, for me, it was just like one of those things. I'm an inquisitive person, and so I needed to understand, and so that's when I started to sort of get more into the kind of networking side of things, because I just wanted to understand how it all happened and how it all kind of came together. And so that was probably, the first job was more, I guess, manual with some basics. And, my second job, the internet was starting to becoming, a little bit more commonplace, and sort of technology decisions were starting to get made, about how people were going to anchor their future. A lot of the IBM shops running OS2, they used to have a Windows emulator on them. And then, that got out of date. And then we got to with Office 95 and things like that, people had to move to sort of Microsoft operating systems. And so, that was a big change. And something I leveraged for my career for a few years was because we did it in one company. And so I've become kind of a little bit of a leader in migrating companies from OS2 to Windows NT through the experience.
You knew where all the bodies were buried in that, migration.
Can make it happen.
Where was Y2K? Did you do anything? Or was that just kind of happening on the side with Y2K?
No, so once I stayed at that company for a couple of years, then I moved on to another company, financial services company, again in the help desk there. And that was an interesting one, because we were there for Y2K. And obviously, there was a whole load of, noise and paranoia about what Y2K and, this whole rollover. And I actually remember on New Year's Eve, we were sitting there, we were on a call, on a bridge, we got the data center guys, we got the network guys, and we were almost, everyone else is counting down to the new year to pop champagne, and we're counting down to the new year to see what's going to happen. And then there was sort of a moment of silence when midnight ticked, and everyone went, are we still here? Are we still talking? Is everything still up? Have we got any alerts? And it was probably the biggest non-event that I've been through.
Consultants made a killing.
Yes.
A killing. So it's probably GDP of a small country was made on the fear, as you said, of Y2K.
Oh, we were a financial services firm, so we were heavily regulated, and we had consultants going around our business. We were so buried in, bearing in mind, we were in the IT function. And they're burying us in 40-page business case documentation and looking for us to provide like audit and regulatory compliance and provide. And everybody was just like, we were just busy fools, I think. Just busy fools.
They're just billing, baby. They're just billing. They're drowning you in paper and billing.
That's right.
Like if we could do a series on just interviewing those people. What were you thinking during the time? And how disappointed were you that everything you said was going to happen never happened? And just go through their stories. That could be a pretty interesting series.
I've talked to a couple consultants about this, and they said our worst case didn't happen, but it's because we prepared. Had we not prepared, this is how they justify. This is how they justify it.
They can justify anything.
This is how they justify. There's a rationalization, right? This is how they justify. It's like, listen, we didn't know. Had we not actually prepared, what if the worst case scenario would have played out? Our hands would have been bloody.
So, Steve, did you actually have a plan in place that as you all are sitting there at midnight, if the world went down, what were you going to do?
Back up. Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Well, I mean, we were in like two minds, right? Because it's like, if the whole world goes down, we're just such a small part of it, right? Like, there's a lot bigger companies than us that need to go figure this out, right?
Accountability did not exist at that table.
To bring the economy back up. I mean, what we did do was like, we sharpened our business continuity plans. We sharpened we sharpened our business continuity plans. Just a quick funny story we were doing our business continuity planning and testing, and we had a generator, right? We had this big generator. And so every time we would do a failover, we would just go cut the power. We'd get the power company, cut the power. UPSs would all kick in. They'd power the data center, it'd run for about an hour. And then literally we'd kick over to the generator. So we'd run these tests all the time. As we were leading up to Y2K, someone said, look, we should do a last continuity test month before we do the continuity test. And so straight away, like, we do it, we cut the power, the UPSs kick in, great, boom, generator spins up, starts whirring around, we're all good. So we would typically run for a couple of hours and then we would flip back. We're about like 50 odd minutes in and we're all patting each other on the back, everything's great. And then suddenly the entire data center, whoom, dead, quiet. I mean, like silence. And we had a big data center, 100 odd racks. Everybody's scrambling. What's gone wrong? The generator ran out of fuel. The generator, nobody had thought to refill the generator.
All the most advanced things.
All that technology and all that money, and nobody had refilled the generator.
I was thinking somebody just unplugged it.
Somebody tripped over the cord.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but it's those types of things. If you didn't know that, I mean, again, you'd never think about that.
Well, nowadays you get building management systems, and you'd have like monitors, and you'd have tools, and you'd have reporting and warning and everything else like that. Right. We just had like, a generator out the back plugged into the mains.
John had to go and actually put fuel in.
And so that become part of our continuity plan for Y2K was we need to make sure the generator's filled up and we've got backup gas. Like,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And luckily we had some consultants to tell us that, because I'm not sure we would have figured it out.
This is so much fun. Take us into your first leadership position. So fast forward to like when you started leading people.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, it was actually at that company, and I guess two things happened. One was I was working on the help desk at the time, and like when you're junior and young in career, it's easy to look at the people around you and just assume they don't know what they're doing, right? Like, and then you think like, well, I could do a better job of this. And so opportunistically, my boss kind of moved on. And so I went to, his boss, and I said, look, I think I could do this job. I've got some ideas. And so he kind of said, look, great, like, let's talk through your ideas, what you think you can do, and let's go do it. And so I took the job. I become the help desk team leader. I had about 1,000 people over like 3 different sites, and a team of 8 to 10 people working for me. And I would say I was a terrible leader, like terrible, because I'd never really had any formal training. Nobody had really told me how to be a leader. And I thought the best way to get people to be really good at what they do is for me to just tell them how to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Like
no promotion, no training,
I just tell you how to do it. Like, I know how to do it. I'll just tell you how to do what I do, and everything will be good. Well, we all know how that kind of story ends. And so, like, it didn't go too well, obviously. And then they decided they were going to invest in me and put me on some leadership training. And so I went on some leadership training. And then I kind of thought back to, like, you know, my days as a taxi driver, that building relationships with people, right? And then I kind of started to bring that into my kind of work life. So thinking about, like, how do I understand what people's motivations is, what they want, what type of person they are? And then how do I kind of work with them to get the best out of them? And my result was not to obviously get a tip out of them. My result was to get them to, you know, to perform at the best of their ability. And I think, like, early on, I can remember as, like, you know, I would go through the training and I would learn about doing performance reviews with people, you know, understanding what their passions are, understand what their ambitions, what makes them tick. As I started to kind of take that and put that in, I suddenly started seeing people, you know, like, really kind of light up and get excited. And then what I guess I realized is, like, you know, not everybody has to be like 100%, right? And we don't have to be 100%. Some people just want to go, just do their job and go home, right? Some people have got career ambition. Some people, you know, really want coaching, mentoring and developing. Some people are just in the wrong seat. And I think, you know, working with people to help them understand what it is they want to do, and then getting them into the right position, and then helping them, you know, develop, grow wherever it is they want to be, or, you know, helping them if they want to transition out. Like, I think understanding people's motivations, I think that was probably a really early thing in my career from a leadership style that really resonated with me, and something that I've kind of, you know, built on throughout my career.
So, question around patience. It seems like when you started, you were just like, go get this done. This is how you do it. Come back. We'll be perfect. Somewhere in there, right? You went to this leadership training. You brought your taxi cab experience in. For someone that's in that spot now, right? Someone's like, they're hitting that spot. They're like, just telling people what to do. How do they build that patience to say, here's, you know, prioritization maybe. Here's 10 things I know I need to accomplish in the next year. I know the end result is right here and we can get it done, but how do I drive my people to do that and not just give them the answer? How do I walk them through step by step? And how do you restrain yourself from actually jumping ahead?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think the first thing you've got to do is ask yourself, do you actually want to do it? Right? Because a lot of people get promoted into leadership because it's like, oh, I'm the best salesperson, and so now we're looking for a sales leader, I'm going to promote you, right? Or I'm the best techie, and now I'm going to promote you, right? And it feels to a lot of people it's the path to the next part of career progression, more money, more status, whatever it might be. And so my first thing to everybody is, like, ask yourself the question, do you really want to be a leader, right? That's number one. Then I think, like, if you decide that that's something that you really want to do, I think a phrase that always sticks in my mind is, like, if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. Right. And you've got to sit down and figure out, like, I start with the where am I today? Right. Like, where am I today? Do I know where I am today? Do I know where I want to go? And, like, what are the steps and the milestones that, you know, things that we need to achieve, the outcomes that we need to get there. And I think once you've got that figured out, then I think you've got to sit down and you've got to talk that through with your team. And so I'm a believer of, like, you don't get 10 people in a room and try and come up with a plan. You get a couple of people in a room, you come up with a plan, and then you get 10 people in the room and you empower them to pick the plan apart, right? And then you come up with a combined plan, because you've got to start from something. Then I think once you've got, you know, here's where we are, here's where we're going, here's the steps we're going to get there, the outcomes we're looking for, and then you've got a timeline to it. Now you've got something that you can be accountable to, right? And your team can be accountable to. And I think that's for me is the key, right? Is a lot of people will say, well, we didn't achieve what we set out to do. Well, is everybody clear what we set out to do? Because it becomes a much easier conversation. And then I think for the leader, it's much easier to be patient. You know, you built a plan. You know where you're going. You know what you expect to outcome. You know what time you're going to get there. You know what you're going to achieve. And yeah, if you start to fall off the plan, then, you know, you need to go accelerate and push in some areas. And, you know, obviously business changes, economic changes, you have to pivot. But that's okay. But if you pivot, it means you pivot. It doesn't mean we do this. Oh, and by the way, we do this as well, right? Because that's where it starts to unravel.
It's one of the things that I think that you're highlighting for folks is making the decision, okay, do I really want to do this? Do I want to become a leader? And if the answer to that becomes a yes, then I think probably another question that's coming up or should come up is, do I have the training in order to be that leader? And if the answer is no, okay, how am I going to get that training?
Yeah.
Either through the company or otherwise. But again, if the answer is yes, which I like that you've emphasized, hey, you might, just because you're the great, the best salesperson, you might not want the sales leadership position.
Every Hall
but
of
if you
Famer
decide
is not a coach.
yes.
And I think there's another key thing to it as well, which is like leadership style. Like you've got to be authentic and you've got to know yourself, right? Like, because you see people will go read books or, listen to podcasts or understand some kind of leadership style. And they think, I want to be that kind of leader. Like, that's what I want to be. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure some people can pull that off, but there's a certain level of authenticity that people see and people believe in. Like, I talk a lot, you'll hear me say, I'm a people first leader. Like, I absolutely believe that. But, I'm also a value creation guy. I'm an operational efficiency guy. I believe in performance culture and all of those things. But I believe it all starts with people, right? And I think sometimes people can confuse that, as like, we just go get the people and, we give them, free coffee and free dinner and, we give them some days off. We'll have a great culture and our company will be great. Like, no, it won't. Like, you need the right people to understand where you're going, what you're doing, and you need the right level of performance, and culture starts from within and builds up. Culture isn't something that you drive from the top down. So like, I think you have to understand your leadership style and who you are, who you want to be.
Does a great leader, in your opinion, pivot their communication style if the team or if the company's not resonating with their messaging? And not just, let me rephrase, not just how they communicate, but their morals or values in that communication.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you go into an organization, if you take employee, right, we're currently like 550-ish people, right? And, there's people who've come through, the acquisition of, the products and, brought them together as employee. Like you've got to meet the people where they're at. Right, you have to understand that they've gone on a journey. They're used to a certain level of communication, and I think this is no different to a new CEO or a new leader coming into any team. You only knew what you knew before, right? And if you had a great leader before, you expect them to do what they did. If you had a terrible leader before, you expect the person not to do that. So I think there is an element of that, but I also think like it's hard to be anything other than your real authentic self and come across authentic, right? Like, I think you can adapt your style and your messaging, right? And, if the organization needs empathy, it needs empathy. If the organization needs to feel certainty, you can give certainty. But I think the delivery of the message needs to be in your own authentic style.
So one of the things that you said earlier is that you're really, you're curious. You got to a certain point in your tech career where you're like, I just wanted to figure out how it works. So I would imagine that curiosity has not gone away. You just positioned the curiosity in different ways now, right? So
yeah,
if true, what are the other things that kind of make you that authentic layer? Those things like curiosity that make you you?
Yeah, I think a couple of things really. I'm a very curious person, right? I like to ask questions. I operate on a trust but verify, right? Like, and the more you verify out, the more I trust you, right? That kind of is important to me. I'm also very direct. Sometimes I can, be a little blunt, like, and I know that about myself. I have to be aware about that. But I'm also very direct and transparent. That's the kind of things I pride myself on is, I will tell you how I feel. You don't have to figure it out. Like, and I'm very transparent about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because, like, I've been an individual contributor. I've worked in corporate companies. I've worked in small companies. And when people stand up and tell a story and everybody looks around at each other and goes, that's not what really happened though, is it? because they just know, right? And so, like, you know, you can't always be completely honest and completely transparent, but like, I think it's fair to share, you know, how you feel and like what you're doing and why you're doing it, and give people context, because I think people will get behind it more. Like, if people feel like that you are sharing with them, you know, the progress you're making, why you're making the decisions that you're making, I think people will then be more likely to, you know, work with you, follow you, you know, go implement and, you know, advocate on your behalf.
I was explaining this very point to my 18-year-old just the other day, because he said, you know, I don't understand girls. I don't understand girls. I just don't understand girls. I said, well, here's the deal. It's situational lying that you need to understand. And he looked at me and he goes, okay, sits down at my desk. I said, he goes, what do you mean? I said, if your girlfriend asks you,
this can't be good.
This can't be good, dude. Do these jeans make my ass look fat?
Oh, goodness.
What's your answer? You can't answer truthfully. Whatever that is, you've got to answer, no, you look great. You look fantastic.
Did you hear Dr. Pepper took over the number 2? That's how much
subject. No, but that's the thing, to your point about there is a time in which you can be transparent. You should probably 90% of the time, maybe 95% of the time. There's also a time when you can't. And a great leader knows when those times are and when they can't. They just can't for whatever reason.
There's an element as well of timing, right? Like, there's some things the organization needs to know at a certain time, right? And there's times like, you know, if you are like doing an acquisition, for example, I've done a lot of acquisitions in my career. Like, you can't tell people about every conversation you're having, right? Everybody gets distracted. Everybody's head's turning. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen, who's buying who, how we're going to integrate it. Yeah. And all we've done is have an opening conversation. And I think there's like an appropriate time to sort of tell people, you know, and so I think that's always a balance. And then really it's about like, you know, sharing as much information as you can so that people understand the context. Because I think, you know, a lot of people go to work, you know, and they want to feel connected to the organization that they work with, and they want to understand why their job makes a difference to the organization. And it kind of is another thing I think about a lot is like, you know, bonuses. Like, companies pay bonuses, right? And they'll say, hey, we pay a bonus and it's done on, you know, revenue and EBITDA. And, you know, a lot of people turn around and say, I understand revenue and EBITDA. Like, explain that to me. Right. Which then tells me straight away, like, they don't really understand like how they earn their bonus, right? And so you're giving away free money, which is great, right? Companies performing, you go pay your people. But you see, I prefer an organization where you can connect the work that people are doing to the performance of the company, to the reward that they get, because that's how you get gratification, right? I did this part of work. My company was successful because I did this work, and now I've been rewarded by it. Like, that's a sense of gratification. And we miss that in a lot of companies because the bonus is like, you expect it as your salary, right? Oh, I get a salary, I get a bonus, I expect to get my bonus. I didn't get my bonus, where's my bonus?
Yeah, there's, you know, it's interesting how you describe that, because as you're saying this, and I reflect back years ago when I was in corporate, there were times where I did just get a bonus. I'm like, cool. I know I'm getting it. I knew I was getting it at a time. I just had to be at the company at the time of distribution, and I was getting it. And it was, I counted on it, and I knew it was there. But when we went to performance-based bonus, I knew I was still getting a bonus. It was a matter of how much based on how much I affected. It became a game in my mind, right? It became more of a driver for me, not just to get more money, but I actually wanted to achieve, mainly because I believed in the company. I wanted to achieve what I needed to achieve to see how far I could push that bonus.
Yeah.
Ultimately for my own good, but it probably held me there longer than I needed to be there at the company.
Yeah, I mean, and there are some roles where it's quite easy. Like, sales is a direct correlation, right? I go sell something, you know, that we book the deal, company makes some money, I get paid some commission. Easy. But when you move into sort of some other functions that maybe not even be customer facing, like, you know, take HR, for example, like, how does HR, like, how does a recruiter affect revenue and EBITDA? Mm-hmm. Well, you know, like they do that by hiring great people and getting them through the door quickly, right? Because the faster we find great people, get them through the door, the faster, then the HR team can get them onboarded, and then we can get them operating, and then they're either growing revenue or protecting revenue. And, the quality of that hire and the speed of that hire as a direct business impact, which, impacts results, which impacts bonus.
Last question for me, Steve, is you've interacted through your career, you've interacted with boards, and there'll be some better than others and all that other stuff. What's your advice to senior leaders, CEOs on board management and board interaction?
Yeah. I mean, all boards are different, right? It's just like people, and, like whether they're private companies, public companies, small family-owned companies, I think you've got to understand the wants and the needs of the people, right? Like, some board members can be very, tactical around a certain function. If they've got a product background, they're going to be interested more in product, right? Obviously, if you're in a private equity company or you're a public company, the deal teams are always interested in the numbers and the finance, right? And I think that's important. But I think, like, if you was to kind of look at some of the summary of things, it's like, again, that transparency. Nobody wants to be surprised. Like, you can't turn up at the board meeting and say we blew the bookings number. You got to start to kind of layer in that information and set expectations up front. I think that's hugely important. I think the second thing is like making sure that you've got alignment, right? What is it that you're actually trying to go and achieve, right? Because, are you an innovation company? Are you a revenue growth company at all costs? Are you a sensible growth company, that is looking to grow profitability? And I think like making sure that you kind of align to that is important. And then really, I think for me, and like I've learned this over my career, is I want to work with people I like. That really comes down to it. Like, every credibility company, everything else is great, but I want to work with people I like. And I don't want people to sort of mistake that with people like me. Like, I'm not looking to go work with a load of people like me. I'm enough. I'm enough for me, right? Like, I want to work with different people that have different perspectives and different views, but just people I like.
That resonates a lot with me.
Yeah.
Ryan, what do you got, brother?
Yeah, I wanted to know real quick, Steve, I know we're at time here, your stance on mentorship at the leadership level. So people coming through the organization, everyone has mentors, everyone does their thing. But at the leadership level, CEO, chief executive, what is your stance there on mentorship? Should people seek mentorship if they do not already have it?
Yeah, listen, that's a really good question. And for me, this comes back to like a lot of things, right? It's like some people do it as a box ticking exercise. I've got a mentor, I spoke to my mentor. I think one of the things that's really important is to sit down and think about, like, what is it you actually need? Like, what do you need? I mean, like, I know, like, me as a person, like, I know where my strengths are, I know where my weaknesses are, right? And, I've had enough time in my career to kind of know that. And so, like, I will kind of use people as like sounding boards to work through solutions and ideas to make sure that, I'm tapping into a view and not just, taking the Steve view of the world, right? And so I think that's important. But it's like, you need to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then you need to go find the right person that can help you. Because, I've met a lot of CEOs and a lot of C-suite people, and just because you're a CEO doesn't mean you're the same as the next CEO and the next CEO and the CEO after that. I mean, if I look back at my previous organization when I was at Vertifor, like a lot of people from the C-suite have gone on to be CEOs. So like, I was a GM there. I'm the CEO of a recruiting company. Our CCO is now the CEO of a company in the technology space. Our CRO is now a CEO of a healthcare company. And so when you look at those CEOs, we all have the title of CEO. But like, if you want to know how to go run a really effective customer org, it's there. If you want to know how to run a really effective sales org, it's here. So I think it's like, understand where it is that you need help and what you need, and then go find the right person that can give you it regardless, of title and seniority.
Right.
Drops mic, walks off stage. Steve Cox, CEO of Employ. Thank you so much for your time. We know you're insanely busy, but thank you for carving out time for the audience.